Well, you could call it the same thing as yelling fire in a crowded movie theatre. False tweets about stuff going on. This is a problem that emerged during the Superstorm Sandy. And Joe Palazzolo is here to tell us a little bit about one of the problems that a guy who, under the Twitter handle @ComfortablySmug may have got himself into a bit of hot water as a result of what he was doing during the storm. Tell us a little bit about what's happened.
So yeah, I mean, in kind of the middle of the storm, he was putting out tweets, some of which were true. You know, he was retweeting news stories, but then he also had kind of some whoppers about the stock exchange being under 3 feet of water. He said at one point that all of the lights were going to be turned out in all of Manhattan. You know, so it was sort of, he was splicing kind of fact and fiction in there. And it scared some people.
But it's actually led to some politicians to call for legal action.
Right.
So
a city council member, and he represents Queens, he went to the Manhattan DA's office and said, you know, we need to do something about this. Let's file charges. And it wasn't clear at the time sort of what kind of liability there, what exactly he did wrong, right?
Well, we kind of know what he did wrong, but it's actually illegal is the question, right?
Right, which is a different question entirely. And so there's a law, there actually is a New York law on the books, and it seems pretty on point. It says, you know, you can't go out and be filing false reports during a catastrophe or emergency.
Right.
But then the question there is, well, this is a pretty broad law. So, you know, after the Supreme Court decision over the summer, in which the court, interestingly, shot down a law that made it a crime to lie about being a war hero.
Right.
Which, I mean, you know, so the court essentially said, sure, this is a disgusting lie, but it's protected by the First Amendment. So, you know, the question now is, does this New York law, if it were applied to false tweets, does it stand up to this case, which is U.S. v. Alvarez?
Well, right, the Alvarez case is the key one, but it sounds there's a difference here in the sense that there's some real danger involved, and there's a possibility of inciting panic, which would be the one concern on that side of the argument, right?
Right. One of the professors that I talked with, a First Amendment expert, I mean, he said that he pointed out that Justice Stephen Breyer in his concurrence. I mean, he explicitly acknowledges that there are laws out there that prohibit sort of lying during catastrophes, and for that very reason. So actually, this professor told me that he thought that it would stand up, that it would survive.
Right. So it comes down to the question of whether lying is protected speech, but it seems the other side of the argument, I thought, was a really good point made in your story. You know, what media organisations who are, you know, in this 24-hour news cycle just pumping out all sorts of information, you know, whether there's an intent to lie or not, this thing becomes quite fuzzy, right? I mean, we could see this thing applied rather aggressively against all sorts of people, including organisations like our own.
Sure. I mean, I think that an important component to this law is that, you know, as the council member says, you would have to show that Comfortably Smug, you know, intended
deliberately
to
did. Right, after that's what a lie is, right?
Right. Exactly. So I think it's a great point, the media point. But
here he is actually just on the screen with his apology that he made afterwards. Obviously, he recognised he did something wrong.
Right. So yeah, I mean, that is definitely a concern, but I think that in most cases we would probably have more cover because, I mean, our job isn't to lie, right? It's to try and tell the truth.
Well, given how many of those, you know, false Twitter handles that are out there, I subscribe to Angela Merkel's tweet feed, for example. I mean, there's a lot of legs to this story.